Good morning, Joe Winberg, Bluebird Semaphore, and I'm going to do world history for ordinary people, and I think this is going to be 36, could be 37. I'll check when I put this up. Now, earlier today, I did a musical video, me playing the piano, improvisation, and the last improvisation I put up, which wasn't too long ago, I gave it a name. It was Paul's Theme. I I do like it. I noticed that at least a number of other people seem to go listen to it. More than a larger number than I usually get on these videos. And I gave it a name. So I think I'm going to start to give things a name when I do them improv. And this one, I'm going to, at least for now, I'm planning on naming it Advantageously You. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to go back to talking about the history of the world. And I was able to get to a library. All the other ones are closed. But this one, with a certain amount of courage, and a certain amount of, I would have to call it defiance, is open under, very strict rules, but, at least a large amount of days and hours. Certainly no one should feel inconvenienced. But they do observe the rules strictly. The girl at the counter told me to pull my mask up a little bit, that sort of thing. And they're still not taking money, but so on. And they're real good. I think the world of, this would be the Ocean City, New Jersey library. And not being a resident of Ocean City, they still give me a card. I have to pay. Haven't paid yet because they're not doing money. But April 1st, they tell me they'll try to reconcile the books. And if it's still the situation that we have now with this virus, who knows what the deal will be. But anyway, so I'm back on some of the stuff that we talked about. And one of the things I try to, now I'm doing, it seems like all the time, is talk about deforestation. In the last talk, I mentioned the Paracas people of the coast of Peru, a peninsula called the Paracas Peninsula, south of Lima, desolate dry land. And I talked about the Paracas people, but I didn't have the archaeology magazine in my possession at the time. It got lost somewhere in this house. But it reappeared, and I wasn't sure of the dates of the Paracas people and what they're finding on the peninsula, which is not populated. I mean, it's a desert. That's all it is, in the shape of a hammer. The hammer's out in the sea, and the handle connects it to the land. Anyway, so I found the archaeology magazine, and now I know the dates better, because what they were finding were not necessarily Paracas people, but some pre-Paracas people. And those dates go back to 3000 BC, which is a date I mentioned in the other talk. I also mentioned 800 to 200 BC, which was the date of the Paracas people. And then I went on to say that when I would read about the Incas, they always would hearken back to a previous people before the Incas, and they may have mentioned Paracas, but I think the one that they really mentioned were the pre-Paracas, I'm pretty sure, and that comes down to the some kind of people. Where are they? Oh, here. Quiche, Quechua. I think that's what when the historians were talking about the pre-Inca people, and they were very mysterious, didn't know much about them. I think they were relating to the Quicha people, Quechus, yeah, and they also probably the Paracas. So anyway, the dates of those pre-Paracas people, 3000 BC and forward, and so just to be a little more correct. Now, I also would like to point out that the magazine, the archaeology magazine, has wonderful photos of the textiles these people did. And once again, I think they're talking about pre-Paracas. They're just bold with color. They're terrific, stylized images of people, probably animals too. And they all can be seen at the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology and a whole bunch of other things. The National Museum of Archaeology, Anthropology, and History of Peru. So if you want to see some gorgeous textiles, head on over to Lima. By the way, that museum is in Lima. And you'll see, I mean, these things knocked me off my feet when I saw them. I mean, they're just gorgeous. I'd hold the pictures up, but, you know, maybe I'll be tagged for infringing on people's rights, so I won't allow myself to step into that. So there you are now. You're about as up to date on the Paracas people and their textile history that I can possibly bring you to. I don't think I'll be going to Lima anytime soon because I'm not going to leave a small circumference of where I live because I do not want to get caught up in these rules that those who think they know it all are forcing on us. So I will now get to the books that I picked up at the library maybe last Thursday, and one is about ancient India, and I may have mentioned this already, I don't know. Another is about pretty ancient, but not that ancient, Greece and that area of the world, the Near East, the region that, you know, so much of our literature and art, or pretty much our civilizations, our culture, stems from. Now, let's talk about the Indian book first, and I'll be reading this, and I'm sure I'll have some more stuff to say about it. But first off, the book is squarely convincing me that lifestyle. This is what this book is supposedly, the life of in India, is, you know, the everyday life, and it's making it clear to me that, and in the other history areas that I've been reading now for, I don't know, how long has it been, a year? I don't know. But it's like, you know, the way people live throughout the world in all the different nations, and countries, and regions, it really isn't different. I mean, basically, it seems they all pretty much have the same social structure, the same cultural beliefs, the same taboos, the same prohibitions, the same lust for battle and gaining more stuff via militarism. They all have it. The whole world had it forever, and they still have it. So if you read enough histories of the various people, you should come to the same conclusion that, hey, you know, what's going on here? It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. Same stuff. And I'm not going to say what that stuff is because I prefer to let you find it out for yourself. So you can't say that, this is what they said. Now, you read the histories of the people's lives in these countries with massive populations, with many, many, many redevelopments, and see how similar they are. They're very, very similar. So I'm I'm getting that from this. Now, what I'm also getting is that agriculture was big, big, big. And although lots of India has become very dry over the years, I haven't come across a particular reference that said this area got deforestation, or was deforested, and so that people could grow their crops and so on. However, they ultimately had a part in turning much of India dry. For example, the reference that the forests were, of small enough stature that they could use it for grazing. And if you don't know what happens to any sort of vacant land that gets used for grazing by domestic animals, you know that after a while it just can't support any more growth than it is. It loses all its fertility. So I think for sure the parts of the desert aspect of India has got to be as a result of human activity. But I haven't come across that death sentence statement like I have in Peru, not Peru, but Borneo, Amazon, and other areas that I've already brought to your attention. So that being said, I said another book was about Greece and the Greek world. And if you know a little of the Greek history, you know that it's pretty much centered about the Aegean Sea. The west part of the sea is the shore of Greece, and maybe a little bit of the north part. And then the shore on the east side of the Aegean Sea is mostly what we call Turkey today. Back when, in ancient times, it was referred to, if you went over there, you were going to Asia. We call it the Near East. They would call it the Asia, and they Anatolia. I didn't think they called anything Turkey yet. But in there was a certain son of a certain king, time frame about 500 BC, and the father died, and he left the son a war that he was prosecuting, and the son felt obliged to continue the prosecution of that war. Now, this was some young man in Greece, and wherever their kingdom, he was the king and now the prince. But the war was on the other side of the sea with, I want to say, all I know for sure, because I don't have the written down the names of the places, but it was some settled region along the Meander River flowing into the Aegean Sea. And they were doing battle with these folks. And I'm talking about the Greek guys doing battle with these guys. And the Greek guys are winning, and they do win. They win. They kill everybody. But the interesting fact is that the son that I'm talking about decided to cut down all the trees in the region. Okay? And he also ravished the crops that had been growing, but something like that they could replant and have the crops again. But his thinking was, if I cut all the trees down, that would somehow make the land not useful for development of any major sort. They could. He also, he left the houses, though. This is part of the interesting point. He left the houses, cut down all the trees in the region. His thinking being that if he left the houses, first of all, he carted off all the people. I believe this is one of those stories where they kill all the men, and the young men were put into slavery. and carted off too. The women and children were carted off into slavery as such, and the men, the adult men, were killed. But he left the houses so that they could be repopulated and they can re-establish some cropland, so that the next time they would air, they would have, they would have the food to replenish their soldiers. But to me, the reason why I bring this up is this is another example somewhere else in the world that they did a complete clear stripping of a large section of the land. I mean, whatever that region was that he was invading, the book makes it out that he cut all the trees in the region. Okay, so as we go through our history tour, I think we're going to see the ravishing of the earth by us humans. I mean, and I think a lot of us are probably aware that this happened in Greece, where they overgrazed the Greek region, peninsula, whatever you want to call it, the Greek state. They overgrazed it, and they turned it into a fairly arid region. So, and that's not the only example of this. I mean, it's an example of harvesting timber throughout the world is really the heart and soul of the bad things that are going on now. Okay? And I don't want to even say the words because I'm not a big proponent that any of these things are the way the scientists and the politicians are saying they are. So I won't even say it. I'll just say that all the bad things in our environment that are going on can be traced back exactly to the deforestation that's been going on since, thousands of years BC. And that reminds me that in the Paracas place where they did their deforestation, the rivers that came down had a lot of flow. However you determine the flow, and there's a unit of measurement, so many gallons a second. These rivers brought down a major amount of water, and they also brought down a major amount of silt after the deforestation, of course. So it's so bad that it's very difficult for the archaeologists to do their work, because the plain is covered 30 feet down with the silt from the rivers. And another note is that if you're familiar with the raft voyage of Thor Heyerdahl, whatever his name is, the Danish dude who took a raft and sailed west off of Peru, and he managed to get to the coral atolls and coral reefs that are just due east and due south of the Marquesian Islands. That's as far as he goes. And he considered that he made it. He was trying to get to Tahiti, and he considered he made it. And you could say, well, he was just short of a bit. But the raft is like totally underwater, 4 feet, and 3 feet maybe when you get there. I mean, it wasn't going to go much further. And why I bring that up is because the logs that he used for that raft came down some of those rivers. He had them chopped up in the Andes, or probably the foothills of the Andes, balsa wood. He had them chopped up there, floated down the rivers to probably someplace in or near Lima, and the rafts were assembled there. So history goes on. Men enter and men leave, and the planet is always going downhill. So, and by the way, if I sound negative, it's because I am, okay? I just can't tell you how bad it's got during my lifetime. It's just terrible. Anyway, so I read about that Greek deforestation. Well, I'm going to call it deforestation. He cut down all the trees over a large region. That's deforestation. And there was another thing I wanted to say, but it was more like in the lines of an opinion. So if I don't remember it now, it doesn't matter. But the look, it's just so much stuff to learn out there in these histories. I hope you're taking the advantage of reading them and then maybe looking for yourself into these topics. I don't think there's enough time left in my life for me to cover all of this. I had I had an idea because sometimes you want to have an approach, or sometimes you just want to do this ad hoc and just see what happens. But I thought as an approach, I would make like 3 rectangular bars across the earth, and each bar was maybe a couple of thousand miles east to west. And these things would be laid on the planet, going north and south and then south. And then I would cut them up into maybe 3 or 4 subsections and then just find out what is in each of these divisions and take it from there. And I still may do that because I think that's at least one way to cover everything possible, even though it might just be a reference here, a reference there, but it would be covered. Like just today, I came across again for the 1,000th time Karzan, Karzan, which is essentially the home seat of the Golden Horde, the Mongols, one of their hordes. And they were considered the Golden Horde because they had the big shots in that one. And I just really, really pinned down where it is. I had been reading about it when I was reading about Russia. That was off to the east of Moscow. And it was also off to the west of the Urals. And that's a big stretch of land. And, I was trying to figure out where it really was. But today I saw it for sure on a map, and it's exactly where they say it is. And it's also from a greater perspective where it should be, because it should be somewhere north of the Caspian Sea, north a little bit of the Black Sea, and the Golden Hordes lived in that general vicinity. So after a long debate, I think I know where it was. And another nice thing I came across historically, I think, was on a TV thing. They had they were talking about some native Indian reenactments, cultures, reenactment of what they do. And it was a lovely girl dressed up as an Indian, well-to-do gal. She made it a point to say, there's no such thing as an Indian princess. But all the teepees in it were all white. And this was like I would say something more or less a jamboree. There were all these white teepees in this place, lots of them. And she talked quite a bit, and then she opened the flap of the entrance to the teepee, and it was really nice in there. They had lovely couches and things in that, all with lovely colored blankets. Everything was nice in there. The type of light that came in through the white coverings of the teepee, all very wonderful. But when I saw that, I said, yurt, because it looked like the inside of a yurt. And part of what you know when you read history is that the Central Asian people are very closely tied to American Indians. No doubt about it. I saw early 20th century black and white video with Central Asian folks dancing around a fire, exactly like what we see when we see there are probably some clips from early American history too of the Indians, but it was the same thing. They dressed the same, they whooped around a lot. My funny story about the whooping Indians is that they got that Indian dance where they hoop up and down and they jump and they go around. They did that to get the voles out of their vegetable patches, jumping up and down on the vole and mole holes. And after that, they said, hey, why don't we make some fun out of this? Have a little dance, and we'll jump up and down. And that is the made-up, fictitious story of how the Indian dances came about, made up from the imagination of one Joe Wenberg, who brings you these lovely thoughts on his attempt to spread world history for ordinary people. Thank you, and we'll see you later. Bye.